What is up, everybody? Isaac here with Civil Engineering Academy. Thanks again for checking us out. If you're finding us at this weird corner of the internet, I appreciate you listening to these things. Share them with a friend. Give us a like. Give us a subscribe. All that jazz. Leave a comment about it. We enjoy those things. So appreciate you tuning in again today. Today, I bring another guest on. He's a repeater, Matt Fanghella. He actually is part of our Civil Engineering Academy team who specializes in water and environmental. And so I wanted to bring him on because I wanted to hear his journey into taking the Water Resources Engineering exam for the PE, as well as some new tools we are developing for the environmental FE and PE. That's kind of a niche within a niche, almost a little bit, because a lot of people that are in water resources end up debating which of those exams to take. So I wanted to bring him on and find out his experience of why he chose one or the other, why someone would want to dive into the environmental exam, and some of the tools that we have coming out for you. One of them is an environmental PE exam that is available now. You can check that out at civilengineeringacademy.com. We'll also eventually have an FE exam, and in the future, probably in 2025, we'll have a course built for the environmental PE exam as well, all built by Matt, who is doing an awesome job in the environmental world. So he also is a certified floodplain manager, which we have a course for that as well. So if you're interested in any of those things, check it all out at civilengineeringacademy.com. So today, we're going to heavily discuss the differences between the WRE exam, the Water Resources and Environmental exam, and the environmental exam. It's a tongue twister, and there's also a lot of confusion surrounding those two exams as to why you would pick one over the other if you're in that world. So Matt's going to explain it all. We hear his journey and why we would choose one or the other, and I think it's really going to help you if you find yourself in this space. So without further ado, let me get out of the way, and let's get to this episode with Matt coming right up after this. See you in a minute. All right, we're rocking and rolling. Matt, thanks for jumping again on the Civil Engineering Academy podcast. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Isaac. Always happy to come in and share our thoughts. I know we've covered a lot of topics over the years, and great to sit back down and be back with you again. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Matt's a big piece of our team. He's helping on the water resources side, helping on the environmental side, helping with CFM, Certified Floodplain Manager. So he's helping with a lot of stuff. So one of the things we got together and wanted to chat about, though, is I think there's a lot of confusion around the Water Resources PE exam and those that end up wanting to choose maybe the environmental PE exam. And so we wanted to come on and talk about those differences, also talk about some resources that we've developed that we have for you. But let's maybe kick that off as maybe the first thing to talk about is, what do you think are the specific challenges in the engineering field that kind of led to the creation of having a dedicated water resources PE exam and a dedicated, I guess, environmental exam?
Sure. Great question to start us off. So I think if we look at the PE water resources exam specs, looking through those specs, have them here in front of me, and you notice they focus on areas hydrology, wastewater treatment, infrastructure design, and looking at the content, the first thing that speaks to me when I look at those topics is that the content of the exam is stemming from the complex challenges that we face in the modern day water resources field. We look at water distribution systems, drinking water, potable water. Ever since, Flint, Michigan, there's been the big push to upgrade systems, the lead pipe initiatives, lead replacement mandates from EPA, updated regulations. So, that's a big topic right now that's driving a lot of the water distribution systems side of the house of water resources. We look at wastewater treatment, new treatment technologies are emerging, beneficial reuse of biomaterials. We have, increased, regulations on emissions thresholds, increased regulations on water quality standards, more and more stringent total maximum daily load TMDL requirements. I think I did a blog post about that on the CEA website a while back. And so those regulations are clamping down. We also have increased levels of infiltration and inflow into the pipe systems, underneath the streets in our communities for the sanitary sewer systems, that's a byproduct of aging infrastructure. So when it rains, water is entering these pipes from rainwater, in addition to the daily sewer flows that they're carrying to the treatment plants. And either the the pipes themselves or the treatment plants are overwhelmed. They're designed to carry a maximum, MGD, treatment threshold each day. And so if the threshold, say, is 80 million gallons per day at the treatment plant and it rains and that introduces additional liquids into the system, then at that point, you're pushing 90 MGD, 100 MGD, how much that rainstorm added, that's causing problems at the treatment plant, right? I look at stormwater management and flood control, the hydrology components of the water resource exam. And, I think we talked about it too when we talked about the Certified Floodplain Manager course we launched late last fall. We were on the podcast talking about the increased frequency and duration of the rainstorms we're seeing. Weather events are becoming more severe, more intense. So we see flooding in areas that haven't flooded beforehand. My own family actually was impacted by a storm just a couple weeks ago in Florida. They were outside the 500-year floodplain, didn't have flood insurance, didn't need flood insurance, but their whole house was wiped out. They've had to cut drywall back up to 3 feet, and total loss, and replace all of that. So we're seeing flooding in areas that didn't previously flood, things like that. And so all of these topics that are covered by the exam specs, I think, reflect the modern challenges faced by the water resources industry. And I think the ultimate goal is to equip the engineers and professionals that are studying for their PE exam currently to be able to tackle these challenges and develop sustainable solutions, whether they take the civil water resources PE exam or the environmental PE exam.
Okay. So, I'm a civil engineer. I work in water resources. I'm looking between these two exams to better help equip me for a better, maybe it's better for my position at work. Maybe it'll get me to move up. What do you think I should be looking at in terms of the differences between the two exams? Why would I choose one versus the other in terms of making that decision?
Sure. I think you have to look at your technical background and, your career path, both where you want to go and where you've been. I think that one of the biggest challenges, and I know for me personally, I saw this, was the exam is called PE Civil, Water Resources, and Environmental. Mm-hmm. And then there's the PE Environmental exam. So at first I thought, oh, wow, I can take the PE Environmental exam. I only have to study half the material, only be tested on half of it, right? And that is not the case if you dive into the exam specs. So there's some differences there. The environmental exam includes a lot of air quality, which can be very technical for students, a lot of waste management topics, environmental health and safety. We'll discuss that, later in the episode here. But I think that you need to look at the exam specs and reflect on, we have in our civil engineering careers, or maybe, some students may be taking the PE exam and have a different discipline, environmental engineering degree or mechanical engineering, et cetera. What you took for your electives and where you feel your strong suits are from a technical standpoint, what you worked on in, your career, what you've worked on, on projects you've worked on in school, group projects, real world, what have you. And then also where you want to go in your career, and then also where you want to focus your study time to learn. No matter which one you choose, you're going to be spending a lot of time on these topics studying. So, if structures aren't really your thing, you might be more inclined to looking at the PE environmental exam because there's just, less emphasis on structural versus, air quality. If you really struggled with that class or you don't know those topics and you don't foresee yourself needing them in the future, or maybe that drives you back to the PE civil water resources side. So that would be my first approach to deciding on which exam to take.
Okay. Well, yeah, that sounds like there's, if anyone's debating which one to do, you should definitely dive into the specifications and kind of look at the topics that maybe are more applicable to you. Another question maybe in general is like, what do you see the specific gaps? Maybe you've touched on this just as we were talking, that, with the increase of storm events and flooding, are there any other gaps that the creation of these two particular exams you feel aimed to fill a gap in our industry?
Sure. I think that creating the different environmental and the water resources exam, practice exams, aims to fill the gaps by assessing engineers on more focused industry-specific categories that they'll be working on, kind of like we talked about in the last little answer there. ultimately, this ensures that the engineer is working on an environmental or in water resources, has the technical proficiencies to succeed in the projects that they're going to be working on daily, that they're responsible for ensuring public health and safety for, et cetera. And, allowing them to maybe narrow their focus a little bit onto the topics that are most applicable in their career.
Okay. Well, let's not to get too off focus here, but I'm curious about your own experience yourself. What was your job and career like that made you decide which exam that you wanted to go with, and maybe even touch on why you dived into the CFM again? And I know you've probably mentioned that in the past, but for any new listeners out there, they probably could hear that again.
Sure. So I think on one of the previous podcasts I was on, we talked about my first major was bio pre-med, and I was actually studying for the MCAT and had graduated with my bio degree and was studying for the MCAT and planned on applying to med school and go that route. And at the time, I was interning at a state environmental agency, and then a full-time position came up and ended up accepting that role, and then saw in order to move along in that realm and that field, I would need a civil engineering degree. And I went back to school at night for 5-6 years and earned my civil engineering degree, passed my my FE exam, and then later on passed my PE exam as a student of Civil Engineering Academy in water resources, which is where we came into contact. So career-wise at the environmental agency, I started out as an intern in water quality monitoring, and then transitioned into air quality permitting, visited a lot of very cool manufacturing facilities and processes. We looked at metal cans getting processed, food processing facilities, drywall, raw goods, some government industrial complex facilities, and the air pollution control technologies at those facilities, and working on permits and keeping everything within environmental regulations when I was in that role. Then transitioned into overseeing the municipal stormwater program for our region at the time, and ensuring compliance with stormwater, erosion, sediment control, ENS, drainage, recurrent flooding, and all throughout too. Also served a collateral duty as the assistant regional state safety officer, and also on the pollution response and environmental preparedness team, after hours team, responding out to chemical spills, providing technical guidance for the fire department on scene for chemical spills, big fires, other environmental incidents, and remediation. So in that time, you'll learn a lot about the environmental work, and then transition more to local government, where I served as the city stormwater engineer, and did a lot of that same work as far as the stormwater, erosion, sediment control, stormwater retention ponds, BMP, overseeing the designs and compliance with specs and standards for state and municipal requirements, and as well as, looking at environmental illicit discharges. We did a little work with the Environmental Crimes Task Force, kind of got to put on our detective hat, doing different, site visits and surveillance on, illegal discharges into the stormwater system, and also did a lot of source tracking with infiltration and inflow with the sanitary sewer system, stormwater system infiltrating into the sanitary sewer system, and vice versa, eliminating a lot of cross connections with the local water treatment authority. So looking into all of that, that was the daily work. And then in 2021, here in the state of Virginia, we had a new program come out, the Community Flood Preparedness Fund, and that required a certified floodplain manager and a locality-wide resilience plan to apply for funding for drainage projects, flood control projects, things like that, things that I needed and projects that I managed on the stormwater side that needed funding to really advance further into design and development versus initial concept. And, we could benefit from the funding, but we did not have a floodplain manager in our locality or a resilience plan. So I had applied for a grant to get us both a resilience plan, help us develop a resilience plan, as well as allow for the funding for two people, to become a certified floodplain manager in the locality, so we'd be able to apply for the grant one of them being myself. So I put together a program, self-studied, and in addition to my normal job duties, and at the time, too, I was also studying for the PE exam. And it took me about 6 months to study and then pass the Certified Floodplain Manager exam. And that let us be able to apply for other grants to fund projects. Since then, I think we have developed about $3 million of grant awards and opportunities to fund flood control projects. And, again, the increasing severity and intensity of the storms, areas are flooding. More and more projects are, getting added to the list of things that need to be done across the country. Each locality, we attend a lot of conferences and a lot of different regional groups, and, everybody's kind of in the same boat of, a lot of drainage projects, a lot of needs and aging infrastructure, and, funds are always limited. So that's the career that I took from there. When I was looking at the PE exam and time to take it, I was looking at, again, the civil water resources versus the environmental, and, kind of at the same crossroads, and had to reach out to a couple of friends who had taken it, and they had advised me on, looking at the specs, seeing what you were good at, the environmental, the air quality and some of the land stuff and environmental health and safety can a lot of times trip people up. It's not really taught that much in schools. It's limited, kind of a niche market. So, just take a look at those exam specs and see which spoke to you. I ended up choosing the civil water resources PE exam because of my experience. And also I noticed too, us at Civil Engineering Academy don't have a course for the environmental just yet. And then
teaser.
And then in addition, there just weren't as many resources out there at the time for the environmental as there were for the water resources. So that's what drove my decision. And then ultimately what's kind of led me back to create, our practice exam here that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I mean, based on everything you've just shared, it sounds like you have a ton of experience in water resources and environmental. So both those components. You mentioned here at Civil Engineering Academy, one of the gaps that we saw that we had is the environmental piece. So Matt's been working on a couple of different things, but one is that is already released is our environmental PE exam. So why don't you talk about what went into the creation of that, why you thought that would be a good resource?
Sure. So again, looking at the exam specs and looking at those gaps, and I think that definitely there's some overlap between water resources and the environmental exams. And I think, though, that there's still, while there's an overlap, there's still areas of not an overlap, right? Mm-hmm. And a lack of information. So by looking at the exam specs and creating an exam that's tailored to specifically the PE environmental specs, we can help students focus on questions and topics that they're going to encounter on exam day. A lot of these exams, we see it with the Certified Floodplain Manager review course and that practice exam. We hear a lot of students, hey, I took the exam and it helped me really narrow my focus on what to study from or identify weak areas. I wouldn't want to see a student ace the practice exam. I'd want to see them be able to use it as a resource to guide them to brush up on whatever they need to and then go in and ace their exam on, game day, regardless if it's the PE civil exam, the CFM exam, or the environmental exam. And I think that by offering the environmental exam, again, we just reach a whole nother group of students who are taking that exam and may not have the information readily available out there to really guide and focus their study and ultimately save them time and set them up for success on exam day.
Awesome. Yeah, and if anyone wants that, you can find it at civilengineeringacademy.com. If you go check that out under our exams, you'll be able to find that exam if you're in the hunt to pass your environmental PE exam. So why don't you touch a little bit on the FE environmental exam, because there is one for that. Is there a difference between those two? And maybe you can tease what you're working on for that.
Sure. So we are wrapping up our FE environmental exam as well. With that, similar to the civil, FE and PE, right? The FE is kind of the baby sibling of the PE. So typically, questions tend to be a little bit easier. They tend to be maybe not as many steps involved in solving, but also not to say they're easy or, there's not tricks and, different, things that you need to come into the exam knowing. The FE environmental, much like the FE civil, you have a specific reference handbook. Something I think that's important to mention too is that there's a separate handbook for both PE environmental and FE environmental. It does not follow the reference handbook from NECES that the civil disciplines do. So if you're taking those exams, make sure you download that resource and be solving all your problems using, the FE reference handbook for environmental if you're taking the FE exam, or the PE environmental reference handbook if you're taking the PE environmental exam. So it's always a good place to start, as well as, your usual calculators. Check the NECES website, make sure you're using something in compliance with that. But, if we look at those exams and, problem solving, the FE, it's a longer exam, 110 questions versus 80 on the PE. And then, again, same thing, right, is a lot of the topics too on the FE, you're going to see again on the PE. Maybe it's more advanced format, maybe it's not. But, the FE is sort of the warm up for the PE and kind of starts focusing. In addition to a lot of topics, both on the FE and the PE, you're given the resource of the handbooks, but a lot of the topics you're required to know things cold coming into the exam. They're not explicitly in the handbook, especially too on the PE environmental exam. There's a lot of regulations that you need to know, and they're not going to be in the handbook. You're expected to know them through your work experience, through your studying, through your, outside knowledge somewhere along the way that you picked up or were exposed to. So it's important that you know a lot of the regulations and the overall, I'm thinking Clean Air Act, Clean Water Act, a lot of our, hazardous materials guidelines, things like that. So there's a whole set of information you need to know outside the reference handbook that you may not know you need to know specifically until exam day, but we try to lessen that and introduce you to some of those topics to get you practice with it in both the FE environmental practice exam as well as the PE environmental practice exam.
Awesome. All right. So, FE exams in development, PE exam is out ready to go for you. You're also working on a course for the environmental PE exam. Could you tease that a little bit?
Sure. So working on the PE environmental review course, very similar to what students have seen with our PE review courses for PE civil. Again, and there's overlap with civil, water resources, and environmental, right? Those circles overlap. For sure, you have a lot of drinking water stuff, stormwater, Darcy-Weisbach equation is Darcy-Weisbach equation, whether you're in water resources or environmental. But then there's also, areas that are specific to the PE environmental. You have the air quality. You have a lot more emphasis on water quality. You have a lot more emphasis on Clean Water Act, RCRA, Clean Air Act, environmental health and safety, flammability, noise pollution, health, chronic daily intake, cancer slope factor, all of these special topics that environmental brings that are not covered in a water resources course. So the PE environmental course looks to help students get educated on those topics. We follow the NECES exam specs, chapter by chapter, module by module, very similar to our civil format, like we said. And it is taking a little bit longer than expected to develop the course, but we are aiming to have that out quarter one of 2025. So I'll be very busy till then, but look forward to reaching out and connecting with a whole other group of students when we launch our environmental course. It's very exciting, and it'll be a first offering for us. I know we're excited about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, teasing it. For those that are interested in that, you can go to a general website where you can sign up to be the first to know about it. We set this up for our courses as we're updating the PE courses, but it'll be the same thing. So go to civilengineeringacademy.com/PE update, and you can go sign up, be the first to know when this thing goes live for our environmental PE course. We're excited to share that with everybody. So if you're in the hunt for that, stay tuned because that's coming. So thank you for sharing those details. Maybe as we wrap this up, I just want to touch on what's your opinion of the outlook for environmental professionals? What's the need? What's kind of the, there are good salaries here. What's the job outlook?
Sure. So the job outlook for environmental professionals, I would say very robust and increasing as we go. There's increased frequency and duration and intensity of the weather events, like we've talked about, a few times now in our discussion. You have more stringent environmental regulations, that's causing, facilities and industries have to comply with new regulations, increased regulations, right? Meet new ways, new control technologies to control pollutants. So, that's increasing. That's going to lead to, more and more jobs need for technical experts, people who know these topics, inside and out. We have demands in areas, environmental consulting, renewable energy, and pollution control technologies. Then we also, look to the emerging fields. Climate resilience is something that has really become a forefront of discussion in the last 10 years or so, especially after Hurricane Sandy and a lot of, fallout and, subsequent needs and projects from that. You have, carbon management, sustainable development, biofuels are all emerging industries, that they're just, at their very infancy of, potential and what may be with these industries. So safe to say that, the environmental professional job outlook is, robust, it's increasing, and it'll probably continue to increase, as we move forward here in time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. I know at one point I was an environmental person. I don't talk about that too often, but when I started my internship, it was with an environmental company working at a place called the American Barrel, which was a site where a bunch of oil was dumped and had to be cleaned up. So anyway, I do have a good sense of environmental work, and I think it's a really good outlook on where things are headed in the future, and still a very desirable spot to be. So if you're headed that route, definitely consider it. And you're going to need to pass your exams, and you're going to check out civilengineeringacademy.com to get some help there. So Matt, I appreciate you jumping on and sharing your experience, sharing what's coming out here in the near future, what is out now. If anybody wanted to chat with you about the environmental PE exam, what's the best way to reach you?
Sure. You can reach me at Matt, M-A-T-T, at civilengineeringacademy.com. And then also check out civilengineeringacademy.com/PE update for an update on the review course. And then also head on over to civilengineeringacademy.com for the PE environmental practice exam. And very soon here, we'll also have the FE environmental practice exam up there as well. So that's how you can get in touch with me. Again, Matt at civilengineeringacademy.com. If you need to get in touch with me directly, be happy to answer any questions or connect with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you doing this, and we'll chat with you in the future.
Thanks, Isaac. Likewise, enjoyed our conversation, and look forward to continued success and working together and serving all our students. So thanks again.
See ya.
Bye.